So what about that word we've heard so much in the last few days, pleb? Edith Hall is a professor of classics at King's College in London, and she can certainly enlighten us, I hope. Thank you very much indeed for coming in this evening. Just talk us through the roots and the origins of the word and explain exactly what it does mean.
It's from a very ancient root, Indo-European root. It means somebody who belongs to the undifferentiated mass. Under the Roman Republic, which means we're talking basically about 700 BC to the senators actually really had the right to rule, and they got that because they had inherited wealth and they were from aristocratic families. Everybody else practically was one of the plebs. They were a pleb and they were poor, and you had about 500 years of class struggle between the two orders because the plebs did not have the right to rule and the senators did. If he's calling somebody a member of the plebeian class, which is exactly what he's doing, as a man who was at Rugby School, which was founded by Thomas Arnold, and where they have force-fed Roman history throughout their teen years, he's saying, you do not, as somebody who has not got inherited wealth, have any right whatsoever to a say in your future of your country. It's incredible that somebody can say this in a modern democracy.
Has it always been a class insult?
Absolutely, it's always been a class insult. It was a class insult in ancient Rome. You find when people use, you can use the word plebs technically, meaning you're a member of this class that didn't have very many political rights at all. You can also use it more subjectively to describe, for example, a plebeian countenance means an ugly face, or a plebeian hygiene means that you smell. I mean, there is no time ever when it's a compliment.
And that's why the class distinction is why it's so politically toxic, potentially, isn't it?
It's completely toxic. It comes into English as a regularly used word with Shakespeare's history plays. In Shakespeare's Coriolanus, you find the toffee, aristocratic people class. That's when it comes in. And by the time of the early 19th century, authors like Bronte and Dickens, it's always used of people who are getting uppity, out of their place, before the Great Reform Act. The point is that this man's ideology belongs either in Republican Rome, when people are trying to do land reforms to help the peasants, he's an enemy of that, or it belongs before the Great Reform Act of 1832 in Britain.
No, we don't know what was said and what wasn't said. There are conflicting accounts, and unless we are given a smoking gun in terms of a recording or some kind of definitive proof, we might never know. But what it does certainly underline is the power of words, doesn't it? Well,
it certainly underlines the power of words. I actually think that the very peculiarity of this word, which is highly out of date, and only used at the sort of public schools like Rugby where he was at, it's not the sort of word the police would ever have thought up in an allegation.
Well, we don't know that, do we?
I know you need to say that. My view is that it's highly unlikely that the police force would have invented that. They'd have said chav or oik or various other words.
But it is, as I say, a salutary lesson to politicians, but everybody, to be really careful about what language they use.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting to me is that we seem to have somebody thinking that they are very entitled to be a member of the ruling class and order around the police force. Normally, they are so well disciplined, these men who've been to the public schools and the army, that they don't let that guard down. I don't know why he let that guard down. I'm not surprised that that's what he thinks. I'm very surprised that he let it out.
Well, OK, as I keep saying, we don't know definitively what happened. We have to keep adding that caveat. In light of the fact that the police officer has accepted the apology, we've had a statemented apology, now a public apology. We know that the Cabinet Secretary is not going to launch any kind of investigation. Do you think that we are reaching a stage now, finally, when we can stop talking about this and just move on?
No, I don't. I think that people's class sensitivities are far too raw. My general sense is that almost everybody thinks that he's got to go and that he knows he has to.
OK. Well, again, we don't know what he said, and that is just your view, so we appreciate it very much, and thank you very much for coming in to see us. That is Professor Edith Hall giving us her views on the word pleb.
It is 8:15. Our main headlines this hour. The radical cleric Abu Hamza